Alpha King Kael Morcant allowed Elsinore Fane's moon mark to be washed from the Moon Pardon Basin in front of every rejected petitioner she had once protected. That was how the court made shame look clean. They called it purification. They called it pardon restored. They called it removing a stain from the right. Elsinore stood barefoot on the cold silver steps of the Moon Pardon Court, while two white-robed attendants held her wrists above the basin rim. Her sleeves had been cut away so the mark could be seen before it vanished, a crescent of pale blue light at the inside of her left wrist, thin as a breath, worn into her skin after 7 years of cleansing petitions no noble wanted to touch. Behind her, the petitioners stood in a silent line. Old widows with rent papers clutched to their chests, bonded servants with collar scars hidden beneath their shawls, half-grown boys accused of disloyalty because their fathers had deserted before they were born, women whose mates had thrown them out and then called their hunger instability, men who had lost wolf speech in war and been treated as if silence were guilt. Elsinore knew every one of them. She had washed blood from their petition cords. She had lifted shame ink from their accusations before the council could seal them unread. She had held their papers over the Moon Pardon Basin until the water separated fear from treason, grief from defiance, poverty from crime. Now those same people were forced to watch the court wash her away. Lady Ceressa Morn stood beside the basin in moon-white silk, her pale gold hair arranged in a crown of soft braids, her perfume bright with winter pear, silver mint, and clean wolf rose. Everything about her had been chosen to look harmless. Her smile, her voice, the way she lowered her eyes when Kael looked toward her, as if power embarrassed her. Elsinore had learned to distrust women who made innocence into costume. Ceressa lifted a crystal ladle from the basin. The pardon right cannot remain in the hands of a woman accused of poisoning pack petitions. A murmur moved through the court. Poisoning. That was the word they had chosen because it made paper sound like flesh. Kael Morcant sat on the black moon throne at the far end of the court, one hand closed over the armrest carved with wolf teeth. He was not old, but war had put severity into him early. Dark hair fell to his shoulders in a straight, heavy sheet. His face was sharp-boned, bronze-skinned, and unsmiling, with one white scar crossing the bridge of his nose. His eyes were pale gold, too bright under the shadow of his brow, and behind them, his royal wolf watched through him, with a hunger that felt almost painful. Elsinore could feel that wolf tonight. Not with desire, with accusation. It stirred whenever the basin water trembled, as if the court's corrupted petitions pressed claws into the king's blood. Kael looked at the line of petitioners, then at Elsinore. "You were trusted with shame before judgment. I was trusted with petitions before burial," she said. A council elder hissed. Ceressa's expression softened with false sorrow. "You see, Majesty? Even now she speaks as though the pardon court exists to challenge royal review." Elsinore turned her head. The pardon court exists because royal review once confused hunger with rebellion. The hall chilled. The petitioners did not move, but one widow pressed her folded paper closer to her heart. Kael noticed. Not enough. Ceressa lowered the ladle until its silver surface reflected Elsinore's wrist. 3 petitions cleansed under your hand returned black at council reading. Their cords smelled of grave, mint, bitter ash, and disloyal wolf, blood. "I did not put those scents there." "No," Ceressa said gently. "You merely washed them where no one else could see." Elsinore looked into the basin. The water should have been clear. The Moon Pardon Basin did not choose saints. It did not pardon the guilty. It did not crown the woman who served it. It remembered petition scent, whose hands tied the cord, what shame was pressed into the paper, what accusation had been laid over need, what perfume entered the water before judgment, and which witness washed the petition before the court decided whether pardon was law or theater. Tonight, the water wore a thin, dark skin. Not enough for the court to fear. Enough for Elsinore. She had seen that darkness 3 times this month, each time before a rejected petitioner was declared disloyal. Each time after Ceressa had touched the petition cords during Lunar Review. Kael leaned forward. "If you did not corrupt the petitions, why did the basin blacken under your service mark?" Elsinore met his eyes. "Because someone made the water carry a lie before I touched it." Ceressa's fingers tightened on the ladle. "Small, quick, gone." Kael saw the movement. Elsinore saw him see it. But the royal wolf behind his eyes flared again, and pain crossed his face so swiftly the court could pretend it had not happened. There was something wrong with his wolf. Something tied to the basin. Something Ceressa knew how to pull. Lady Ceressa stepped closer to Elsinore, her perfume moving like clean snow over rotten ground. A loyal servant submits to cleansing. A guilty court enjoys calling it cleansing. Gasps broke through the chamber. Kael Rose. The court fell silent at once. He descended the black moon steps, tall and broad-shouldered in dark armor beneath a white mantle, every movement controlled. When he stopped before Elsinore, the air between them felt charged with wolf breath and old water. His voice did not soften. The Moon Pardon Basin must stand above suspicion. Yes, Elsinore said. That is why you should not let suspicion hold the ladle. Ceressa's smile faded. Only for a heartbeat. Kael's jaw tightened. For one breath, Elsinore thought he would ask the right question. Instead, he made his mistake. Wash the mark. The attendants forced Elsinore's wrist over the basin. Ceressa lifted the lala. The first pour struck Elsinore's skin like melted ice. Her moon mark flickered. The second pour burned colder, pulling blue light from her wrist in thin threads. The third pour tore the crescent apart until the court gasped at the clean skin beneath. The petitioners bowed their heads, not because they believed her guilty, because they had just watched what happened to a woman who had touched their shame and lived. Ceressa set the crystal ladle down. Pardon is restored. The basin water turned black. Not cloudy. Black. It rose without spilling, a dark column lifting from the silver bowl as if the water had found a throat. The scent of winter pear, silver mint, and clean wolf rose rolled through the Moon Pardon court. Ceressa sent. The petitioners began to whisper. Kael turned slowly toward the basin. Elsinore stood with her bare wrist burning where the mark had been erased. She did not look to him for rescue. He had allowed the washing. The water had answered despite him, not because of him. The black column bent toward Ceressa, then toward the long table where rejected petitions lay sealed for judgment. One by one, their cords darkened. Not all. Only the accused. Only the ones Elsinore had begged the court to reopen. Ceressa stepped back. Some impurity remains. Elsinore looked at the water. No, she said. Something came with you. Kael looked from the dark basin to Elsinore Fane, her wrist stripped clean before the whole court. His voice did not soften. Why does my pardon basin carry Lady Ceressa's scent? The black water bent toward the sealed petitions, and one pale blue line burned across the basin rim. Ceressa's scent entered the pardon water before Elsinore touched the basin. Kael looked from the pale blue line to Ceressa's crystal ladle. His voice did not soften. Who allowed her near the water before Elsinore's mark was washed? Ceressa Morn answered before the black water finished bending toward the sealed petitions. I performed lawful Luna review. Her voice was soft enough to sound wounded, clear enough for the whole Moon Pardon court to borrow it. That was Ceressa's gift. She could make power sound like innocence if she lowered her lashes at the right moment. The black water hovered above the Moon Pardon Basin in a dark column, bending toward the petition table where the cords of the accused had begun to stain. Pale blue light burned along the basin rim where the warning had appeared. Ceressa's scent entered the pardon water before Elsinore touched the basin. Alpha King Kael Morcant looked from that line to Ceressa's crystal ladle. His voice did not soften. Who allowed her near the water before Elsinore's mark was washed? Ceressa turned toward him with perfect sorrow. Majesty, the chosen Luna has always inspected petitions before a cleansing rite. My scent entered because I stood in service to the court, not because I corrupted it. Elsinore Fane stood barefoot on the silver steps, her left wrist burning where the moon mark had been washed clean. The skin looked empty now, too clean, too obedient. The petitioners behind her stared at that stripped place as if the court had removed part of their own last hope. She did not look to Kael for rescue. He had allowed the washing. The water had answered despite him, not because of him. A council elder lifted his staff. Luna review is lawful. Elsinore looked at the dark water. Lawful hands can still carry poison. Ceressa's mouth tightened for one breath. Poison again? You were the one accused of it. No, Elsinore said. I was the one convenient enough to hold it. The black water rippled. not into an answer. The Moon Pardon Basin did not solve court crimes. It remembered petitions sent, whose hands tied the cord, what shame had been pressed into paper, what accusation had been laid over need, what perfume entered the water before judgment, and which witness washed the petition before the court decided whether pardon was law or theater. Elsinore had to read the rest. Kael's pale gold eyes fixed on her. Read it. Not gently. Not apology. Elsinore stepped down from the silver stair and moved toward the basin. The attendants reached to stop her, but Kael lifted one hand. They froze. She did not thank him. She leaned close enough to see her own face in the black water. It should have reflected nothing now that her mark had been stripped. Instead, the surface wore a thin, dark skin, stretched tight over the silver bowl like oil over winter glass. Black water skin, she said. Saressa exhaled. Any basin darkens during impurity. Not from below. Kael leaned closer. Meaning? If the petitions were poisoned by my washing, the black would rise from the mark water after I touched it. Elsinore pointed to the surface. This lies on top. It entered before the rite began. Saressa answered smoothly. Perfume floats. Yes. Elsinore turned toward her. Truth often does. The petitioners did not laugh, but one of the half-grown boys in the line lifted his head. Elsinore reached toward the crystal ladle. Saressa's hand moved first. Kael saw it. His voice cut through the court. Leave it. Saressa withdrew. Elsinore took the ladle by its handle, careful not to touch the bowl. The crystal looked pure, carved from ice-white stone, but along its inner lip clung a faint silver film. Winter pear, silver mint, clean wolf rose. Not enough to condemn, enough to begin. Perfume trace, Elsinore said. Inside the ladle, not outside. Saressa's voice sharpened delicately. I carried the ladle for the rite. After the basin was filled? Yes. Elsinore tilted the ladle toward the dark column. Then the scent should be on the handle, where your fingers touched. It is inside the lip, where water poured before the cleansing. The court grew quieter. Kael's royal wolf stirred behind his eyes. Elsinore felt the pressure of it, the hungry suspicion tied to the basin, the old pain that made him trust what the rite showed before he understood who had fed it. She did not soften. His bound wolf was not an excuse for her erased mark. She turned to the petition table. Bring the accused cords. A council elder bristled. Those petitions are sealed for judgment. Then let judgment stand close enough to be read. Kael looked at the elder. Bring them. 3 sealed petitions were laid on the table. A widow's rent appeal, a servant's collar, removal plea, and a war, silent man's request to keep his cottage after losing wolf's speech. Their cords had once been white. Now each bore a dark stain near the knot. Elsinore touched none of them. Petition cord, she said. The stain begins at the Luna Review knot. Saressa smiled faintly. Because I reviewed them. And ends before the cleansing loop. Kael looked closer. Meaning? If I had poisoned them during basin work, the stain would pass through the loop where I washed them. It does not. The corruption began before my mark touched the cord. Saressa's expression remained gentle. Or you prepared them before washing. Elsinore lifted her bare wrist. The court looked at the clean skin, where the pale blue crescent had been torn away. Erased moon mark, she said. The basin should no longer answer it. The black water trembled. A thin, pale blue reflection rose from the surface, not on her skin, but on the water itself, the shape of the crescent that had been washed from her. It hovered above the accused cords, broken but visible. The petitioners gasped. Saressa stepped back. Old residue. No. Elsinore's voice stayed level, though pain ran up her arm. A washed mark does not return for old residue. It returns when the petition timing has been reversed. Kael's jaw tightened. Explain. Elsinore pointed to the 3 cords. These petitions were marked accused after Luna Review, before cleansing. Then my washing was used to make the stain look like mine. Saressa's eyes flashed. You insult the rite. Clean water does not become holy because powerful hands stirred it. The black water bent lower over the petition table. Only after Elsinore named black water skin, perfume trace, crystal ladle, petition cord, erased moon mark, and rejected petition timing did the pale blue line run from the basin rim to the 3 accused cords. Then the warning burned across the silver table edge. Saressa touched the accused petition cords before the cleansing rite. Kael looked from the stained Luna Review knots to Saressa Morn's crystal ladle. His voice did not soften. Who gave Luna Review power over petitions already marked for pardon? Saressa Morn looked toward the council elders before she looked at the basin. That was the first place guilt went, when beauty needed witnesses. The 3 accused petitions lay on the silver table with their cords darkened at the Luna Review knots. The black water hovered above the Moon Pardon Basin, bent toward the papers like a judge that had finally learned to distrust perfume. Elsinore Fane stood barefoot beside it, her left wrist stripped clean, the erased moonmark burning now only as a pale blue reflection on water. Alpha King Kael Morcant stood between the throne and the basin. Who gave Luna Review power over petitions already marked for pardon? His voice did not soften. Saressa lowered her lashes. Majesty, Luna Review has always protected the purity of pardon rights. A petition may appear clean and still carry hidden disloyalty beneath its grief. A council elder nodded too quickly. The chosen Luna's hand keeps false suffering from reaching the throne. Elsinore looked at the old man. False suffering usually has better clothes. A ripple moved through the petitioners. Not laughter. Recognition. Kael's eyes cut toward the elder. Answer the question. The elder swallowed. The authority was recorded in the pardon ledger during seasonal rite revision. Elsinore turned to him. After the petitions were cleared, his mouth tightened. Small. Enough. Saressa stepped forward, her white skirts whispering over the floor. You twist timing because you fear review. A loyal witness would welcome a second hand. A second hand should not arrive after the wound has already been judged clean. Kael looked to the record keeper. Bring the pardon ledger. The keeper hesitated. Elsinore noticed. So did Kael. The king's wolf pressed behind his eyes again, hungry and pained, as if the basin's black water had teeth in his blood. He did not apologize. He did not look at Elsinore's bare wrist long enough for pity to become useful. He only repeated lower, bring it. The ledger arrived, bound in pale hide, its corners capped with tarnished silver. It had rested for generations beside the Moon Pardon Basin, recording which petitions entered in shame, which left marked for pardon, and which were sent to royal judgment. Elsinore had cleaned its clasps more times than she had cleaned her own hands. Now it was placed before her like a stranger. Kael looked at her. Read it. Not gently, not apology. Elsinore did not soften toward him. He had allowed the washing. He had allowed Saressa's ladle to strip her mark before the people she had protected. A king could ask the right question too late and still be standing in the wrong place. She opened the ledger to the 3 accused petitions. The black water lowered but did not touch the page. Good. The basin remembered. It did not explain. The pardon mark came first, Elsinore said. She pointed to the margin beside the widow's rent appeal. A thin crescent had been pressed there in old pale blue ink, nearly hidden under a newer silver stamp. Kael leaned closer. That mark means cleared. It means shame separated from accusation. The petition was ready for pardon review, not suspicion. Saressa said, and Luna Review found what you missed. No. Elsinore pointed to the silver stamp. Luna Review was added over the pardon mark. The elder stiffened. Layered authority is common. Not backward. She turned the page toward the basin. The black water's surface tightened. A faint blue light rose beneath the silver stamp, showing the crescent underneath it like bone under thin skin. Pardon ink dries inward, Elsinore said. Silver Luna ink sits on top. This was added after the petition cleared. Saressa's smile remained soft. That proves only that I reviewed it later. Later, yes. Lawfully, no. Kael's gaze sharpened. Elsinore moved to the servant's collar removal plea. Its cord had been tied with a plain mercy knot first, then wrapped in a pale ribbon bearing Saressa's small moonflower seal. Review ribbon, she said. Saressa lifted her chin. My office uses those. Your office added it after the cord was sealed. The record keeper whispered. How can you tell? Elsinore looked at him. Because the cord remembers pressure. She pointed to the knot. A pardon cord is tied once, then dampened over the basin so the paper accepts witness water. If the ribbon were present then, it would have water shadow beneath it. Kael looked at the ribbon. There is none. No, it was tied dry. After cleansing, the black water trembled. Not because it was choosing sides, because the cord had finally been named in the correct order. Ceresa's voice cooled. You speak as if servants alone understand sacred knots. Servants are the ones who untie them when sacred hands finish pretending. The petitioners behind Elsinore breathed in together. One sound, one wound. Kael heard it. His jaw tightened, but he did not look away from the ledger. Elsinore turned to the third petition, the war-silent man's request to keep his cottage. This one hurt most. The man had lost wolf speech at the northern trenches and returned with no howl, no defense, and a council eager to call silence disloyal. Elsinore had washed that petition twice because the first time the basin had carried too much battlefield grief to separate cleanly. Now, a black stain sat across his name. Rejected petition timing, she said. Kael's voice lowered. Show me. The council rejection mark was written after Luna review, but before the final basin reading. She traced the air above the ink without touching it. That means the petition was condemned before the basin was allowed to finish. Ceresa said, the court may halt a corrupted right. Yes, Elsinore said, if corruption appears. She looked at the basin, but the water was still clear then. The black column bent closer. A pale blue crescent flickered once across Elsinore's bare wrist, then vanished before the court could call it restoration. Pain ran through her arm, but she kept her hand steady. Kael saw it. She did not let him make it tenderness. The erased mark remembers what it was present to witness, she said. It washed these petitions before Ceresa's ribbon, before council rejection, before black water skin. Ceresa's eyes sharpened. A washed-away mark cannot testify. No, Elsinore said, but the water can show what it lost. The black water slid down into the basin without spilling. Then it rose again in 3 thin streams, each one touching the air above a different petition cord. Not solving, not condemning, only returning the order Elsinore had named. Pardon mark, dry review ribbon, council rejection, black water. Ceresa went still. Kael saw that too. Elsinore spoke before the court could bury the sequence under awe. These petitions were marked for pardon. Ceresa's Luna review was added after clearing. Then the council rejection was placed before the final basin reading. My service mark was erased to make the corruption look discovered under my hand. The ledger shuddered once. Only after Elsinore had named the pardon mark, dry review ribbon, layered ink, erased moon mark, and rejected petition timing did the basin rim burn pale blue again. The warning spread across the silver table edge. Luna Review Authority was added after the petitions had been marked for pardon. Kael looked from the altered ledger to the council elder's trembling hand. His voice did not soften. Who amended the pardon ledger after the petitions cleared shame? The council elder's hand trembled before his mouth found loyalty. That was never a good order. Ink could be blamed on procedure. Seals could be blamed on office. But a trembling hand belonged to a body, and bodies remembered fear before tongues dressed it as duty. Alpha King Kael Morcant stood beside the Moon Pardon Basin, with the altered ledger open before him, pale blue light still burning across the silver table edge. Who amended the pardon ledger after the petitions cleared shame? His voice did not soften. Elder Halvin Brigg lifted his chin with the tired dignity of a man who had spent too many years turning cruelty into tradition. Majesty, seasonal revisions often require retroactive alignment. Luna Review Authority was clarified, not forged. Elsinore Fane looked at the word clarified in his mouth and hated it. Clarified was how courts cleaned a blade after it had already cut. Lady Ceresa Morn stood near the basin, moon-white silk untouched by the black water, her perfume faint but still present in every breath of the court. Winter pear, silver mint, clean wolf rose. She had arranged herself as innocence again, hands folded, eyes lowered, mouth gentle with offense. The elder is correct, Ceresa said. A right cannot function if every servant decides which authority she prefers. Elsinore looked at her. A right cannot function if authority arrives after the truth. Kael's royal wolf pressed behind his eyes. The basin's black water shivered as if the beast inside him had dragged its claws along the silver bowl. Pain crossed his face and vanished. Elsinore saw it. She did not soften. His bound wolf had sharpened suspicion against her. It did not erase the washing. Kael looked at the elder. Show the amendment record. Halvin Brigg's fingers tightened on his staff. It is in the ledger. No, Elsinore said. The amendment in the ledger is what we are questioning. Show the hand that carried it. The court shifted. That was the kind of sentence servants were not supposed to speak. Servants carried things. They did not demand to see what carried power. Kael did not look at her with apology. Bring the amendment slip. A record keeper hurried to the side cabinet and returned with a narrow strip of pale vellum sealed in silver wax. He laid it beside the pardon ledger. Elsinore did not touch it. The Moon Pardon Basin did not solve the crime for her. It remembered petition sent and water order, but paper still needed a living witness. It would not crown her. It would not cleanse the court because she had been wronged. She had to read what the court tried to make clean. Revision ink, she said. Ceressa gave a faint sigh. Ink now carries guilt? No, Elsinore said. Timing. She pointed to the writing on the slip. The words were elegant, formal, and calm. Luna Review may attach before final basin reading where suspicion of disloyal scent remains. Beneath the last line, the ink feathered slightly at one corner. Pardon ledger ink dries blue at the edge, Elsinore said. Council amendment ink dries silver. Kael leaned closer. This edge is dark. Yes, because it was written over basin damp. Halvin Briggs swallowed. Small. Enough, Elsinore continued. A true seasonal revision is written dry in council chambers, then brought to the basin. This was written after the paper had already been near pardon water. Ceressa's voice stayed smooth. The slip may have been prepared during right review. During, yes. Before, no. She pointed to the lower margin. There is water skin under the wax. Kael looked at the silver seal. Meaning? The seal was pressed after basin water touched the slip. The amendment was sealed after someone brought it into this court, not before. The black water rose an inch from the basin, dark and still. Not speaking. Listening. Elsinore turned the slip by its edge. On the back, nearly hidden beneath the wax fold, a faint crescent smear glimmered pale blue. Erased mark echo, she said. The petitioners drew in a breath. Kael's gaze went to her bare wrist. Elsinore felt the burn there answer the water, a pain like cold wire threaded under her skin. She did not give him the pain as a plea. It passed over my service place, she said, after my mark had been washed. Halvin Briggs protested. Impossible. The amendment authorized the right. No, Elsinore said. The right happened. Then the amendment was made to explain why it had been lawful. Ceressa's eyes sharpened. Only for a breath. But Kael saw it. So did Elsinore. She pointed to the wax. Council seal. Kael looked. It is Elder Briggs. Yes, but the pressure is wrong. The elder stiffened. My seal is mine. Your seal, yes, not your hand. She pointed to the left side of the wax, where the moonwolf imprint sat deeper than the right. Elder Briggs' right hand trembles. His seals lean right, because he presses down to steady himself. This one leans left. The court turned toward the elder's shaking fingers. Halvin Briggs looked suddenly old. Ceressa stepped forward. Majesty, this is cruelty. Must she shame every loyal servant of the court to distract from her own corruption? Elsinore looked at her. You call it shame only when it leaves your hands. The black water rippled harder. Kael's jaw tightened. Whose hand pressed the seal? Elsinore looked down at the slip again. Not enough yet. The words surprised the court. They had expected accusation. She gave them sequence. The slip was written over basin damp. Sealed after the washing. Passed across my erased service place. Pressed with Elder Briggs' seal by a left hand. She looked toward the petition table. But that only proves the amendment was false. It does not prove who ordered it. Ceressa's shoulders eased by a fraction. Elsinore saw it. She turned to the silver table where the accused petitions lay. Bring the Luna Review tray. Ceressa's softness vanished. Kael's eyes moved to her. There. The tray arrived carried by two attendants, a shallow white silver plate used to hold petitions before a chosen Luna inspected them. It should have been clean. Of course it looked clean. Everything near Ceressa looked clean until water was asked to remember. Elsinore leaned over the tray. Perfume under wax, she said. Ceressa lifted her chin. My tray carries my scent. Yes, Elsinore said. That is why this matters. She pointed to a pale crescent smear along the tray's rim. The amendment slip rested here after the washing. Not in the council cabinet. Not on Elder Briggs' desk. Here. Kael's stare hardened. The black water bent toward the tray, then stopped. waiting for Elsinore to finish. Basin damp, erased mark echo, left-hand council seal, perfume under wax, Luna review tray. Only after she named each piece did the water draw one dark line from the amendment, slip to the tray, and back to the accused petition cords. The warning burned across the silver rim. False Luna Review Authority was sealed after Elsinore's mark was erased. Kael looked from the Luna Review tray to Ceressa Morn's folded left hand. His voice did not soften. Who placed the amendment slip on your tray after the washing? Ceressa Morn looked at her folded left hand before she answered. Not long. Only long enough for Elsinore Fane to know the hand mattered. The Luna Review tray sat on the silver table between them, pale and polished, too pure in the way Ceressa preferred all dangerous things to look. Beside it lay the amendment slip, Elder Briggs' borrowed seal leaning wrong in the wax, its edge marked by basin damp, its back carrying the pale echo of Elsinore's erased moon mark. Alpha King Kael Morcant looked from the tray to Ceressa. Who placed the amendment slip on your tray after the washing? His voice did not soften. Ceressa's lashes lowered. My attendants prepare write materials, Majesty. A chosen Luna cannot be expected to know which servant placed every slip, ribbon, or petition before her. Elsinore looked at the tray. How convenient. Servants are invisible until blame needs hands. A murmur moved through the petitioners. Ceressa's mouth tightened. I will not be insulted by a woman who corrupted the basin. The basin carried your perfume before my mark touched it. Because I performed lawful review. Then let lawful review stand still while I read it. Kael's pale gold gaze moved to Elsinore. Read the tray. Not gently. Not apology. Elsinore did not soften toward him. He had not restored her mark. He had not unmade the cold water that tore it from her skin. He had only begun asking questions after the black water refused to behave. She bent over the Luna Review tray without touching it. The Moon Pardon Basin did not solve the lie for her. It remembered petition sent, water order, perfume, shame, accusation, and witness. It would not name Ceressa because Elsinore had been wronged. It would only hold what entered it before judgment. She had to read the court's clean surfaces. Tray rim, she said. Kael leaned closer. Along the inner curve of the tray, beneath the polish, a faint dark crescent rested where the amendment slip had lain. Not ink, not ash, water shadow. This is basin damp, Elsinore said. The slip was placed on the tray while still wet from pardon water. Ceressa answered smoothly. The tray stands beside the basin during rites. Yes, but this damp is underneath the slip, not from air, from contact. Elder Briggs swallowed. Elsinore pointed to the tray's left side. Wax drag. The silver surface showed a nearly invisible streak where the false seal had scraped before cooling fully. Kael looked. The seal was fresh when set there? Yes. Ceressa's voice sharpened by a silk thread. Fresh seals prove haste, not guilt. False authority often hurries after truth. The black water in the basin stirred. Not enough to speak. Enough to listen. Elsinore turned the tray slightly and saw a pale smear near one handle. Winter pear, silver mint, clean wolf rose. Perfume under wax, she said. Ceressa gave a small laugh. My tray carries my scent. You said that already. No. Elsinore looked at her folded hands. The perfume is beneath the wax drag. Your scent touched the tray before the fresh seal did. The court went still. Kael's royal wolf pressed behind his eyes, hunger and pain sharpening together. The basin water darkened at the center, as if that wolf's suspicion had weight. Elsinore felt it pull. She did not let it become pity. His wolf's binding did not make her humiliation less public. Ceressa lifted her chin. I handle my own tray before every rite. Then your left hand should have left scent at the outer handle. Elsinore pointed to the inner rim. This is inside, where papers rest. Kael's gaze moved to Ceressa's hand again. Her fingers remained folded. Too neatly. Elsinore looked toward the attendants. Two white-robed women stood near the basin steps, faces pale. One had held Elsinore's wrist during the washing. One had carried the towels that wrapped the crystal ladle. Who keeps the tray? Elsinore asked. The younger attendant opened her mouth. Ceressa spoke first. The court keeps it. Elsinore did not look away from the attendant. Who touched it after my mark was washed? The attendant's throat worked. Lady Ceressa did, my lady. Seressa turned sharply. Careful. Kael's voice cut lower. Let her answer. The attendant shook. She said the rite had revealed corruption and that the council must clarify authority before confusion spread. Seressa's face softened instantly. I said the court must be protected. Elsinore looked back at the tray. Protected from what? The petitions had already been marked for pardon. Seressa replied, From you. The words landed too cleanly, too quickly. Elsinore almost smiled. Not from humor, from recognition. There, she said. Kael's eyes narrowed. What? She named me before the amendment named authority. Seressa's expression froze. Elsinore pointed to the tray's lower corner. Private review dust. Kael looked closer. Dust? Moon chalk from Seressa's private review table. It does not belong on the public tray during a basin rite. Seressa said, all review spaces use moon chalk. No, public review chalk is blue-white. This is pearl gray. Elsinore looked at Seressa. The kind used to prepare Luna presentation petitions. The black water bent toward the tray. Not enough. Not yet, Elsinore continued. Basin damp under the slip. Fresh wax drag. Perfume beneath wax. Left-hand placement on the inner rim. Attendant witness. Pearl gray, private review dust. She looked at Kael. The amendment slip was not placed here by a council keeper. It was written or sealed where Seressa's private review materials touched it, then laid on this tray after my mark was erased. Seressa's voice dropped. You cannot prove where it was written. Not with this tray alone. Again, the court expected accusation. Again, Elsinore gave sequence. She turned toward the long petition table. Bring Seressa's private review board. For the first time, Seressa did not answer quickly. That silence did more than a confession would have. Kael saw it. The basin water rose in a thin black ring, circling the silver rim, waiting until Elsinore finished naming what power had tried to make pure. Only after she had named tray rim, basin damp, wax drag, perfume under wax, left-hand placement, attendant witness, and private review dust did the pale blue light burn across the table edge. Amendment slip carried Seressa's private review dust after Elsinore's mark was erased. Kael looked from the glowing line to Seressa Morn's closed left hand. His voice did not soften. What petitions were on your private review board before the court called Elsinore a stain? Seressa Morn did not look toward the side doors when Kael asked for her private review board. She looked at the petitioners. That was worse. A guilty person feared evidence. A cruel one feared witnesses. Alpha King Kael Morcant stood beside the Moon Pardon Basin, the black water circling the silver rim in a thin, dark ring. The Luna review tray lay on the table with basin damp under the amendment slip, fresh wax drag across its inner curve, and pearl gray dust clinging where public rite materials should have carried only blue-white court chalk. What petitions were on your private review board before the court called Elsinore a stain? His voice did not soften. Seressa's expression folded into hurt dignity. Majesty, my private review board holds presentation matters, Luna offerings, ceremonial requests, petitions seeking public grace before the throne. It is not a place for corruption. Elsinore Fane looked at the 3 accused petition cords darkened near the Luna review knots. No, she said. It is where corruption learned to look graceful. The council elders stirred. Kael's eyes moved to her. Read the board. Not gently. Not apology. Elsinore did not soften toward him. Her wrist still burned where her moon mark had been torn away. His command had made that pain public. His better questions did not make her skin whole. 2 attendants carried in Seressa's private review board, a narrow slab of polished whitewood edged in silver, used for Luna presentation rites. It looked delicate, almost holy, with moonflower carvings along the corners and a shallow groove for petition cords. Elsinore distrusted it immediately. Too clean, too pale, too ready to forgive itself. Seressa lifted her chin. That board has nothing to do with Elsinore's service mark. Then it will not mind being read. Seressa's fingers curled against her skirt. Small. Enough. Elsinore leaned over the board without touching it. The Moon Pardon Basin lowered its dark water by a breath, waiting. It did not speak for her. It did not name Seressa. It remembered water, paper, shame, perfume, and sequence. Elsinore still had to make order from what power had scattered. Private Luna chalk, she said. Kael looked closer. Pearl gray. Yes, the same dust found on the amendment slip. Saressa answered quickly. All my review materials carry that dust. Not all petitions should. Elsinore pointed to the shallow groove where cords had rested. 3 faint marks crossed the white wood. One thin and frayed, one thick from servant hemp, one darkened by old war oil. The petitioners behind her seemed to stop breathing. The widow, the bonded servant, the war-silent man. Their petitions had been there. Elsinore did not say it yet. Names deserved proof before court mouths touched them again. Cord shadows, she said. 3. Saressa said, many petitions pass through Luna presentation. These did not seek presentation. They may have been forwarded for review. After they were marked for pardon, Saressa's smile held. A chosen Luna may examine mercy before it reaches the throne. Pardon, Elsinore corrected. And no, not after clearing. Kael looked down at the board. How can you tell when they were there? Elsinore pointed to the first cord shadow. Pardon damp. The groove beneath the thin frayed mark held a faint blue stain, old and dry, but still visible beneath pearl gray dust. When a petition is cleared at the basin, its cord carries pardon water for 1 night, she said. If placed on a board before clearing, it leaves no blue. If placed after clearing, it leaves this. The black water rippled once. Saressa's voice sharpened. Pardon damp, on a review board, proves only that cleared petitions reached me. No. It proves cleared petitions reached you before they were accused. She pointed to the second shadow. Servant hemp stain, still pale beneath your ribbon dust. The accusation black was added later. The bonded servant in the line gave a soft sound and covered his throat scar. Elsinore kept reading. The third mark hurt most. Dark war. Oil from a petition cord tied by hands that no longer carried wolf speech. The oil had seeped into the board, then been scraped at the edges with something fine. Scrape mark, she said. Kael's gaze hardened. Someone tried to remove it. Yes. Saressa lowered her lashes. Private boards are cleaned after rites. Cleaned before this one could remember too much. The black water rose slightly. Elsinore lifted her bare wrist over the board, but did not let her skin touch it. The erased moon mark answered, with a pale ache beneath her skin. A thin blue reflection appeared across the white wood, not on her wrist, but along the 3 cord shadows. The court murmured. Saressa stepped back. She is calling her washed mark again. No, Elsinore said through the cold pain. The board is calling what the washing stole. Kael saw her hand tremble. She closed it before he could mistake pain for invitation. The blue reflection showed the original order. Cleared cord, Luna board, perfume mark, black accusation stain. Not black first, clear first. Elsinore read it aloud. The petitions were cleared at the basin, then placed on Saressa's private review board, then touched with perfume and Luna chalk, then returned to the pardon table carrying accusation. Saressa's face remained gentle. Her left hand did not. It tightened around the hidden fold of her sleeve. Elsinore saw the movement. So did Kael. Saressa said, Majesty, this is jealousy of Luna authority dressed as service. Elsinore looked at her. I served the rejected before authority learned their names. That struck the line of petitioners harder than any magic. One widow lifted her petition. Not high, just enough to be seen. Elsinore looked at the whitewood board again. There is one more mark. Kael leaned closer. At the board's lower corner, nearly hidden beneath a moonflower carving, lay a tiny crescent cut filled with dark residue. Storage nick, Elsinore said. This board was not kept in the Luna chamber after review. Saressa's eyes sharpened. Of course it was. No, the nick carries petition table silver. Kael looked toward the long table. Meaning? It was taken from private review to the sealed petition table before the court accused me. Someone moved the cleared petitions back after corrupting them, then called the stain mine. The basin water bent toward the private board. Only after Elsinore had named private Luna chalk, 3 cord shadows, pardon damp, scrape marks, erased mark reflection, perfume order, and storage nick did pale blue light burn across the edge of Saressa's whitewood board. Cleared petitions were held on Saressa's private review board before they were returned as accusations. Kael looked from the glowing board to the sealed petition table. His voice did not soften. Who moved pardoned petitions back to judgment after Ceresa's review? The record keeper looked at the sealed petition table as if wood might open its mouth and betray him first. It did not. The Moon Pardon Court had been built to make silence look sacred. Silver columns rose in clean arcs around the basin. Pale banners hung without movement. Every drawer in the long petition table bore a moon wolf lock, polished by generations of hands that preferred judgment to leave no fingerprints. Alpha King Kael Morcant stood beside Ceresa's private review board, where pale blue light still burned along the edge. Who moved pardoned petitions back to judgment after Ceresa's review? His voice did not soften. Record keeper Mon lowered his head. Majesty, petitions move according to court sequence. Basin clearing, Luna review, council alignment, judgment table. If the petitions returned here, they followed right procedure. Elsinore Fane looked at him. Procedure is what the guilty call footsteps after they wipe the floor. The petitioners behind her stirred. Ceresa Morn stood near the basin with her left hand folded beneath her sleeve, face composed again, perfume faint but careful. This is becoming cruelty. Must every servant and keeper in the court be dragged through shame because Elsinore cannot bear correction? Elsinore looked at her. You liked shame better when it had my name on it. Ceresa's eyes cooled. Kael looked toward the sealed table. Open the judgment drawer. Mon swallowed. Majesty, the judgment drawer may only open under final council call. Kael's pale gold eyes did not move. Open it. Not gently. Not apology. Elsinore did not soften toward him. The king had power enough to open drawers. Too late. It had not stopped him from letting her mark be washed away. Mon drew a narrow silver key from his belt and fitted it into the moonwolf lock. The drawer slid open with a cold sound. Inside lay 3 judgment folders. Widow rent appeal, collar removal plea, war silent cottage claim. Their outer covers bore black rejection bands. Elsinore's mouth went dry. She had seen those same petitions cleared. She had washed the shame from them. She had watched the Moon Pardon Basin separate hunger from rebellion, bondage from disloyalty, silence from treason. She had felt the water steady under her service mark. Now the covers looked as if the court had always meant to bury them. Kael looked at her. Read them. Not gently. Not apology. Elsinore stepped forward. The black water in the basin dipped lower, then rose, waiting. It did not reach into the drawer. It did not seize the papers. The Moon Pardon Basin remembered petition order, water skin, perfume, cord pressure, and witness timing. It would not finish what a living witness refused to name. She looked first at the rejection bands. Judgment wrap, she said. Mon spoke quickly. All petitions marked for final review receive one. Not before the final basin reading. She pointed to the black band crossing the widow's folder. This was wrapped while the cord was still damp from pardon water. Kael leaned closer. Meaning? If judgment had followed the right, the cord would have dried first. This band pressed the wet cord flat. She pointed to the narrow mark beneath it. Pardon water trapped under rejection. The widow in the petitioner line made a small broken sound. Elsinore did not look back. If she saw the woman's face, anger might become grief, and grief moved too slowly for court. Ceresa said, wet cords can remain damp for hours. Yes, Elsinore said, but not under Luna chalk. The black band carried pearl gray dust along one edge, the same dust from Ceresa's private review board. Not council ink, not basin ash. Luna presentation chalk. Elsinore looked at Kael. The petitions were wrapped for judgment after Ceresa's board, not after council reading. Ceresa's expression remained smooth. My review was part of the sequence. Then your chalk should be before the cleared mark, not inside the rejection fold. Kael's royal wolf pressed behind his eyes. The basin water trembled, and the black column thinned into a ring around the silver bowl. Elsinore felt the pull of that bound beast again, suspicion sharpened by corrupted water. She did not give it mercy. It had watched her like guilt while the court washed her. She turned to the second folder. The servant's collar removal plea had been folded in haste. One corner was bent back, carrying a smear of clear wax. Transfer wax, she said. Mon's face paled. The table seals many documents. This wax comes from the Luna review tray. Ceresa said, the tray does not seal judgment folders. No, that is why it should not be here. Elsinore lifted the folder just enough to show the underside without breaking the cord. A faint crescent smear glimmered pale blue beneath the wax. "Erased mark echo," she said. Kael's eyes moved to her bare wrist. Pain answered under her skin. Elsinore held the folder steady. "This passed over the basin steps after my mark was washed," she said. "The folders were returned to judgment while the court was still watching me bleed light into the water." The petitioners went very still. Now they understood. The washing had not only humiliated her, it had been cover. While every rejected person watched Elsinore's mark vanish, their petitions had been moved behind them. Ceressa's voice softened with practiced grief. "Majesty, she is making theater of unfortunate sequence." Elsinore looked up. "Pardon was theater when you used my shame as curtain." The black water rose sharply. Not enough to spill, enough to make every council elder step back. Elsinore turned to the final folder, the war-silent man's cottage claim. Its rejection band was tight enough to crease the paper beneath. At the knot, a thread of white silk had been tucked into the cord. "Luna sleeve fiber," Elsinore said. Ceressa's left hand closed beneath her sleeve. "There." Kael saw it. Elsinore saw him see it. She did not rush. "Not enough," she said. Ceressa's shoulders eased by a fraction. Elsinore looked toward the side aisle. "Who carried the folders?" Mon whispered. "A court runner." "Name." His throat worked. "Pelin Mar." A thin, young runner near the rear doors went white. Kael's gaze cut to him. "Come forward." The boy stumbled into the open space and dropped to one knee. "Majesty." Ceressa's voice became cool. "Runners carry what they are given. Do not frighten the child into lies." Elsinore looked at Pelin's cuffs. "Show your hands." The boy obeyed. His fingers were clean. Too clean. But under one nail, where no court polish had reached, a fleck of pearl-gray chalk clung beside pale blue water stain. Elsinore's voice lowered. "He carried the folders from Ceressa's review board to the judgment drawer after my mark was washed." Pelin began to shake. Lady Ceressa said the king had already condemned the witness. She said the petitions had to be secured before the basin spread corruption. Ceressa lifted her chin. "I said no such thing." The boy bowed his head lower. "She gave me the folders." The court erupted. Kael did not. His face went still in a way that made the noise die by itself. Elsinore pointed to the drawer. "Judgment, wrap over wet pardon cord. Luna chalk inside rejection fold. Transfer wax from review tray. Erased mark echo. Sleeve fiber. Runner's chalk and water stain." Only after she named every piece did the Moon Pardon Basin draw one black thread of water through the air, from Ceressa's review board to the runner's fingers, from the runner's fingers to the judgment drawer, and from the judgment drawer back to the accused cords. The warning burned across the open drawer front. Pardoned petitions were moved to judgment while Elsinore's mark was being erased. Kael looked from the trembling runner to Ceressa Morn's folded sleeve. His voice did not soften. "What did you need the court to watch instead of those petitions?" Ceressa Morn let the court look at the trembling runner before she answered the king. That was another kind of theater. Give them a smaller fear, and they might forget the larger hand that placed it there. Pelin Mar knelt beside the open judgment drawer, his fingers still showing pearl-gray chalk and pale blue water stain. The 3 pardon petitions lay bound in black rejection bands, carrying the marks Elsinore Fane had named. Wet pardon cord trapped under judgment wrap, Luna chalk inside the fold, transfer wax from the review tray, a white sleeve fiber tucked near the knot. Alpha King Kael Morcant stood beside the Moon Pardon Basin. "What did you need the court to watch instead of those petitions?" His voice did not soften. Ceressa lowered her lashes. The court needed to watch contamination removed. Elsinore's service mark had become the center of suspicion. If petitioners saw her remain beside the basin, every judgment would be questioned. Elsinore looked at the line of rejected people behind her. Every judgment should be questioned when it needs a public shaming to survive. A few council elders stiffened. Ceressa turned her sorrowful gaze toward the petitioners. "You see how she does it, Majesty. She teaches the desperate to doubt the right that protects them." "No," Elsinore said. "I taught them where the water was supposed to be clean." The black water in the basin trembled once. Not agreement. Memory. Kael's royal wolf pressed behind his eyes again, drawn by the basin's movement. Elsinore felt that old bound hunger sharpen. the suspicion the corrupted water had fed until it looked like justice. She did not soften. His wolf had watched her like a stain while the court washed her. Kael looked at Elsinore. Read what they were made to watch. Not gently, not apology. Elsinore turned toward the silver steps where she had stood while her mark was erased. The attendants had wiped away the spilled water after the washing, but court servants always cleaned what nobles wanted forgotten, not what the basin remembered. She stepped barefoot onto the lowest stair. Cold bit through her skin. Basin step, she said. Ceresa's mouth tightened. The steps proved nothing. Everyone saw the cleansing. Yes, Elsinore said. That was the point. She crouched and pointed to a faint crescent smear on the silver step. Pale blue light clung to it, thin as breath, where her service mark had bled into the water under the crystal ladle. Erased mark spill, she said. It ran down the left side. Kael looked. Meaning? The court watched my wrist. The water fell here, but the attendants were ordered to wipe the right side. One of the white-robed attendants went pale. Ceresa said, "The water splashed." No. Elsinore looked at the attendant who had held the towel. It was carried. Kael's eyes moved to the girl. "Bring the cleansing cloth." The attendant froze. Ceresa's voice softened. "Majesty, she is terrified." "She should be," Elsinore said. "Not of me." The cloth was brought from the basin alcove, folded twice, its white surface damp along one corner. It should have smelled of silver water and moon salt. Instead, winter pear moved through it. Elsinore did not make the court wait for the basin to show what her hands already knew. "Perfume trace," she said. "Not from the basin, from fingers." Ceresa lifted her chin. "I stood near the right. You stood near everything useful." The petitioners shifted. Kael did not look away from the cloth. Elsinore unfolded it carefully. Along the inner fold, a thin black mark stained the fabric, the same width as a petition cord. Not a spill. Pressure. "Cord shadow," she said. The record keeper swallowed. Kael's gaze sharpened. "A petition cord touched the cleansing cloth?" "Yes." While the court watched my mark being washed, Ceresa said, "Impossible." The petitions were on the table. Elsinore looked toward the judgment drawer. Not all of them. She held the cloth near the basin. The black water rose by a finger's height, then stopped. It would not pull the answer out for her. It waited for sequence. Elsinore named it. Erased mark spill on the left step. Cloth used on the right. Perfume on the fold. Petition cord shadow inside. Pale blue water stain beneath the black. Kael's jaw tightened. The cloth touched both your erased mark water and the petitions. "After the washing began," she said, "before the drawer closed." Pellinmar bowed his head lower. "Lady Ceresa told me to take the folders while the court faced the basin. The cloth was in her hand. She said the water had to touch them so the rejection would bind." Ceresa's face changed only in its stillness. "She lies through frightened mouths now," Ceresa said. "A runner will say anything when an alpha king stares at him." Elsinore looked at the boy. He did not know enough to lie correctly. The black water rippled. Kael's eyes cut toward her. She continued before anyone could turn that into favor. "He said rejection would bind. That is Luna language. Court runners say seal, carry, file, return. They do not say bind unless someone dressed judgment as ritual." Ceresa's left hand curled again beneath her sleeve. Elsinore saw it. Kael saw it. But still not enough. "Bring the witness line tablet," Elsinore said. A council elder flared. "The witness line is closed after cleansing." "That is why I want it." Kael gave the order with one glance. The tablet was a narrow silver slate, listing those required to face the basin during public cleansing. Alpha King, council elders, chosen Luna, attendants, accused witness, petition line. Beside each role was a small moon notch showing where their attention must remain. Elsinore pointed to the chosen Luna notch. "Turned outward," she said. Kael leaned closer. "It should face the basin." "Yes. During cleansing, everyone faces the mark being washed, but this notch was turned toward the petition table." Ceresa answered too quickly. "A tablet error." "No, a sight line." The court quieted. Elsinore pointed from the notch to the petition table, then to the side route behind the basin alcove. From there, Ceresa could face the basin, lower the ladle, and still see Pelin move the folders. Kael looked toward the passage. For the first time, his hand tightened, not in suspicion, but in anger. Elsinore did not let that comfort her. She looked at the silver tablet. There is dark wax under the notch. The record keeper whispered, "Witness notches are never waxed." This one was. She looked at Ceressa, so it would hold the wrong direction. The black water bent toward the tablet. Only after Elsinore had named the basin step, erased mark spill, cleansing cloth, perfume trace, cord shadow, runner language, witness line notch, and sightline did the Moon Pardon Basin send one dark thread across the silver floor, from the steps to the cloth, from the cloth to the judgment drawer, from the drawer to Ceressa's turned witness notch. The warning burned across the witness line tablet. Elsinore's public cleansing was used to hide the return of pardoned petitions to judgment. Kael looked from the turned notch to the black rejection bands on the 3 petitions. His voice did not soften. Who prepared the disloyalty marks before the basin finished reading? Ceressa Morn looked at the black rejection bands before she looked at the disloyalty marks. That was the order of her fear. The bands could be called procedure. The drawer could be called sequence. The public washing could be called purity. But a disloyalty mark was harder to soften. It was not a question. It was a sentence placed on paper before a living person could answer. Alpha King Kael Morcant stood beside the witness line tablet, where the Moon Pardon Basin's warning still burned dark across silver. Who prepared the disloyalty marks before the basin finished reading? His voice did not soften. Ceressa folded her left hand inside her sleeve. Majesty, disloyalty marks are prepared whenever corruption is suspected. Preparation is not judgment, it is protection. Elsinore Fane looked at the 3 petitions bound in black: the widow's rent appeal, the servant's collar, removal plea, the war, silent man's cottage claim. Protection, she said. Ceressa turned her soft eyes toward the petitioner line. Would you rather the pack be exposed to hidden treason while a basin servant delays the court? Elsinore's bare wrist burned where her mark had been erased. I would rather the court stop calling hunger treason because the hungry cannot argue beautifully. A sound passed through the rejected line. Not loud. Enough. Kael heard it. The black water in the Moon Pardon Basin tightened into a still ring, waiting. It did not reach for the answer. It did not open the petitions by itself. It remembered water order, perfume trace, cord pressure, witness timing, and accusation laid over need. But it would not give justice to people the court refused to look at. Elsinore turned to Kael. Bring them forward. His eyes narrowed. Who? The petitioners whose papers you let them bury. A council elder snapped. They are already present. No, Elsinore said. They are standing where shame was placed. Bring them to the table where judgment was placed. Ceressa's expression cooled. This is unnecessary cruelty. Elsinore looked at her. You preferred them useful as background. Kael's gaze moved from Ceressa to the silent line. Then he gave one short order. Bring them forward. Not gently. Not apology. Elsinore did not soften toward him. He was doing now what he should have done before her mark was washed. The widow came first, small and bent, both hands shaking around a folded rent notice. The bonded servant followed, collar scars hidden beneath a gray shawl. The war-silent man came last, broad-shouldered and hollow-eyed, his throat marked with old battle wounds where his wolf speech had died. They stood before the table. Not symbols. People. Elsinore pointed to the widow's petition. Disloyalty mark. A black crescent had been stamped beside the widow's name. Its edge was too sharp, the ink too dry. Ceressa said, the mark was prepared after corruption appeared. No. Elsinore leaned closer. Before grief water dried, Kael looked down. Grief water? When a widow's petition enters the basin, the water leaves a gray-blue edge where mourning has been separated from debt. This mark sits on top of that edge, but the edge was still wet when it was stamped. The widow whispered, I only asked to keep the east room through winter. The court did not answer her. That silence accused more than any mark. Elsinore moved to the servant's plea. Collar shame ink. The paper bore a faint brown stain where the servant's old collar cord had touched it. Elsinore had washed that stain twice because bondage marks clung to accusation like burrs. The basin cleared this, she said. The disloyalty mark was added after clearing, then sealed under rejection wax. Ceressa replied, a servant asking to remove a collar may still carry disloyal intent. The servant lifted his head. My first master is dead. No one had asked him that before. Elsinore felt the wound of it. She pointed to the third petition. The war-silent man's cottage claim carried the deepest black crescent, pressed so hard it had bruised the paper. War, silence mark, she said. Kael's face tightened. The man did not speak. Could not. His hands closed once, then opened, as if he were trying to show the court that emptiness was not betrayal. Elsinore looked at Kael. His petition was condemned because he could not howl loyalty on command. The king's royal wolf pressed behind his eyes, pained and hungry. The basin water shivered. For one breath, the wolf looked through him not at Elsinore, but at the silent man. Then Kael looked away. Too late. Still not enough. Elsinore placed her hand above the 3 petitions, careful not to touch them. Disloyalty ink, rejection wax, cleared grief water, collar shame ink, war, silence mark, all added after pardon clearing, before final basin reading. Ceressa's smile returned, faint and dangerous. You keep saying after and before as though timing can cleanse guilt. Timing is how guilt learned to wear your perfume. The petitioners behind them breathed in sharply. Kael looked at the black marks. Who stamped them? Elsinore did not answer. Instead, she turned away from the petitions and faced the whole court. I will not cleanse another record, she said. The elders erupted. Ceressa's eyes sharpened. Kael went very still. Elsinore lifted her stripped wrist. Not one. Not the ledger. Not the judgment drawer. Not the rejected banns. Not the basin rim. Not until every petitioner named in these altered records stands where the court can hear what need was turned into treason. Ceressa said, You refuse royal process? I refuse to wash shame off paper while the people carrying it are kept behind my back. Kael's jaw tightened. And if the records remain black? Then the court will look at what it made. The black water rose. Not violently. Slowly. It lifted from the basin in 3 thin streams and bent toward the widow, the servant, and the war-silent man. It did not touch them. It hovered above their petitions, holding the sequence Elsinore had named. Only after she had named disloyalty ink, grief, water, collar shame, war silence, rejection wax, and the living witnesses did the basin rim burn pale blue again. Disloyalty marks were prepared before the basin finished reading the petitioner's truth. Kael looked from the 3 petitioners to Ceressa Morn's hidden left hand. His voice did not soften. Who turned living need into disloyalty before judgment was complete? The war-silent man lifted his scarred throat before anyone found an answer for the king. He could not howl. He could not speak. But he reached into his coat and drew out a strip of old battlefield cloth, folded so many times its edges had gone soft. He placed it beside his cottage claim with both hands, then stepped back as if even that offering might be judged disloyal if he stood too close to it. Elsinore Fane looked at the cloth. Not decoration. Witness. Alpha King Kael Morcant stood beside the Moon Pardon Basin, his face carved hard with the effort of holding his wolf still. The black water hovered in 3 thin streams over the widow, the servant, and the war-silent man, carrying the warning that had burned across the rim. Disloyalty marks were prepared before the basin finished reading the petitioner's truth. Kael looked at Elsinore. Read it. Not gently. Not apology. But not dismissal either. Elsinore did not soften toward him. Not yet. Perhaps not for a long time. She leaned over the battlefield cloth. The smell of old smoke rose from it, buried under years of rain, wool, and silent grief. One corner bore a faded moon soldier mark. Another carried a small knot of cottage thread, tied by hands that had tried to remember home while surrounded by death. This was tied to his war pack, she said. The war-silent man nodded once. The court listened because Kael had not given it permission to look away. Elsinore pointed to the cottage claim. His petition cord was tied with the same thread. That means the cottage was not a reward. It was war return property. A council elder whispered. Then it could not be seized for disloyalty without royal review. No, Elsinore said. It could not be seized at all unless he betrayed the crown after return. The black water bent toward the disloyalty mark on his petition. Elsinore looked at Lady Ceressa Morn's hidden left hand. Bring her stamping ring. Ceressa's eyes flashed. I wear no judgment ring. Then open your hand. The court went still. Ceressa looked toward Kael. and for the first time her innocence forgot its own face. "Majesty, you cannot permit a basin servant to command the woman chosen to stand beside your throne." Kael looked at Elsinore's bare wrist, then at the black water, then at the 3 petitioners he had almost allowed to be buried under purity. "She is not commanding you as a servant," he said. "She is reading what my court tried to hide." Ceresa's mouth parted. It was the first wound he gave her in public. Not enough for Elsinore, but real. Kael's voice lowered. "Open your hand." Ceresa did. On the inside of her left ring finger, hidden beneath a moonstone band, black ink clung in the crease of her skin, not fresh enough to smear, not old enough to fade. Around it, pearl-gray chalk dust had settled beneath the nail, and one strand of white silk was caught where the ring had bitten her. Elsinore did not touch her. She did not need to. "Disloyalty ink," she said. "Pearl-gray private Luna chalk. Sleeve fiber, left-hand pressure." Ceresa lifted her chin. "I review many petitions." Elsinore pointed to the black crescent stamped beside the widow's name. "Your ring edge is chipped." Kael looked closer. So did the court. The disloyalty marks on all 3 petitions bore the same tiny break along the lower crescent, a flaw no official court stamp carried, a private mark made to look like authority. Ceresa's face went very still. Elsinore named the sequence one final time. The petitions were cleared by the basin. They were moved to Ceresa's private review board. Her perfume, chalk, and left hand touched them. False review authority was sealed after my mark was erased. The petitions were returned to judgment while the court watched my public cleansing. The disloyalty marks were prepared before the basin finished reading the petitioner's truth. The Moon Pardon Basin did not roar. It did not choose Elsinore. It did not crown her. The water simply rose, black and shining, and formed a scent shadow behind Ceresa Morn. Pale gold hair, white silk, folded left hand, crystal ladle raised over another person's shame. Then the shadow broke apart into 3 black crescents and laid them across the silver floor at her feet. The final warning burned around the entire basin rim. Ceresa Morn turned pardoned petitions into disloyalty to silence the rejected before they could be heard. The Moon Pardon Court erupted. Ceresa stepped back from the black crescents. "I protected the throne. You think mercy is harmless? You think petitions are only tears and hunger? Rejected people become banners. Banners become rebellion. I gave you a clean court." Kael's face changed. Not with surprise. With recognition too late to be noble. Elsinore looked at him and saw the moment he understood that Ceresa had not poisoned petitions to win a small rivalry. She had poisoned the idea of need itself. She had made hunger, bondage, widowhood, and silence look like treason, so the throne would never have to kneel low enough to hear them. Kael turned to the guards. "Remove Lady Ceresa Morn from Luna standing. Bind her left hand. Seal her private review chamber." Ceresa laughed once, sharp as broken glass. "And when the rejected flood your throne with accusations?" Kael looked at the petitioners. Then at Elsinore. His voice carried through the court. "Then the throne will learn to listen before it judges." The guards took Ceresa. She did not scream. She did not confess. She walked out with her chin high and black water staining the hem of her white gown. Kael faced the court. "From this night forward, Luna ceremony holds no authority over pardon petitions. Pardon law returns to petition witnesses, basin keepers, and living testimony. No petition marked clean by the Moon Pardon Basin may be returned to judgment without the petitioner standing before the court." The elders stared at him as if he had broken a sacred machine. Elsinore thought of all the people that machine had eaten. Kael descended the silver steps until he stood before her. The whole court watched him look at the bare place on her wrist. "My command washed your mark," he said. Elsinore held his gaze. "Yes. I cannot call its return forgiveness." "No," she said. "You cannot." The Moon Pardon Basin stirred. A pale blue crescent rose from the water and hovered above Elsinore's stripped wrist, not touching her skin, waiting. Kael did not reach for it. That mattered. Not enough to heal, enough to begin differently. He bowed his head before her, not deeply enough to look theatrical, not briefly enough to be dismissed. A king's neck, exposed in the court where he had let her be shamed. "Then let it stand as witness," he said, "until you decide whether it belongs to you again." Elsinore looked at the crescent on the water, then at the widow, the freed servant, and the war-silent man. First, she said, their records. Kael stepped aside, not leading her, making room. Elsinore turned to the basin. The pale blue crescent did not return to her wrist. It settled instead on the silver table, beside the 3 petitions, and the black marks broke apart like soot under rain. The widow kept her east room. The servant's collar record was cut from the ledger. The war-silent man's cottage claim was restored beneath royal seal, not as pity, but as property the court had no right to steal. Only then did Elsinore lift her bare wrist over the Moon Pardon Basin. The water cleared, not because the court was clean, because, for once, it had stopped pretending. Across the rim, one final law burned in pale blue light. Pardon belongs to the witnesses who carry shame, not the hands that perform purity. Kael stood beside Elsinore beneath that light, feared and silent, no longer asking the basin to excuse him. Elsinore did not forgive him that night, but when she walked out of the Moon Pardon court, every rejected petitioner followed her through the silver doors, and the Alpha King remained one step behind.